In August of 2010, I got down on my knee and proposed to Noelle. We were at the High Museum of Art in downtown Atlanta, and I planned the whole evening. We went to dinner at Park 75 restaurant. It was in the Four Seasons Hotel, which was walking distance from the museum. I had the engagement ring in my jacket pocket, and the whole night, was sweating bullets. I knew she would most likely say yes. I wasn't nervous about her answer. There was this time a few months prior where we had this totally awkward moment in a mall where I sized her wedding or her ring finger at a jewelry store. You know, it's a totally normal thing to do on a date walking around the mall. I was just curious about what size her ring finger would be. We had the discussion also multiple times about what our futures looked like together. So I wasn't nervous about my feelings towards her or her feelings towards me, but I did want the night to go well. And that made me anxious. So we're at dinner. It was a lovely dinner. The ring is still in my jacket pocket, and I'm grasping for it every time that I can and holding on for dear life. I remember always walking on Noelle's right side because the ring was in my right pocket and I didn't want her to bump it or to feel it if she got too close. I was really nervous, and I wanted the night to go really well. So I chose this particular evening because it was the opening night to a Salvador Dali exhibit at the High Museum. And it just so happens that Salvador Dali is Noelle's favorite surrealist artist. So these were my thoughts. We would leisurely walk around the museum, looking at all of the art, discussing the finer points of what we were seeing. We'd hold hands, and then when we get to the famous melting clock, I'd get down on one knee and pop the question. What I did not know is that the opening night at the High Museum is usually a jazz festival. 7 billion of our closest friends had also come out to be a part of this evening, and the lines were excruciatingly long. Then there were 2 friends from seminary who saw us in line and pretended to be with us so they could cut the other 6.4 billion others that were behind us. So now I've got friends around me that I have to talk to and pretend to entertain. It's a hot August evening and the sun is setting, and I have an engagement ring in my pocket, and it's dawning on me that there is going to be no leisure things happening in the next 3 hours. We were going to be shoulder to shoulder with strangers, no doubt about it. And I wasn't wrong. But it wasn't terrible either. I had resigned myself to just wait, and when we were out of the museum, I would find a place to pop the question. I saw a little sidewalk off to the side. There was a park bench. It was secluded. I walked Noelle over, and then I got down one knee, and I asked her to marry me. At that moment, the stress of the evening, the anticipation, the crowds, the confusion of the best laid plans not working, all of it went out the window. And the peace that surpasses understanding fell on that moment. Nothing else seemed to matter, at least not in the few precious seconds that we had, and it felt holy. Something came, and it was from God. Scripture calls this moment peace. I think sometimes we feel like God's peace has to be stressless, void of distraction, or the antithesis of despair, when I think the opposite is actually true. Now, sitting alone on the beach or with a book in your favorite reading nook, it's quite peaceful. I'm not saying it's not, but God's peace is something that overtakes us, not in the absence of chaos, but smack down in the middle of it. That night with Noelle was stressful. People were everywhere. It didn't go as planned, but yet I have to really think hard to remember the chaos, because what sits in my soul from that night is that the waters parted, time stopped. Even though it was just for a moment, the peace of Christ swelled, and we were caught in what felt like an enveloping loop of love. God's peace. The peace on earth, the life-changing Advent kind of peace, it comes not in the absence of chaos, but smack down in the middle of it. And that's true for the Israelites in Isaiah 42. To really read Isaiah and to get it, you have to understand that there are actually 3 Isaiahs written from 3 different time periods. Scholars call it 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Isaiah. If you've never heard this before, let me be the one to tell you that Isaiah from the beginning to the end is not written by the same person. It's more of a pseudonym. There probably was an original Isaiah, I think there was, but then later writers would use the same name to further the story. This is not uncommon. It just is what is. To not know this detail when reading Isaiah, though, is to not really know what it is you're reading. It would be like standing in the front of a Salvador Dali painting, but not really sure what it is that you're looking at. Now, you can be right in front of it. You can be engaged with it, be around people that know all about it, but still miss it at the same time. So let me help. The 3 Isaiahs were written in 3 different time periods and empires: Assyrian, Babylonian, and Persian. Now, a quick overview of Israelite history will help. After Israel became a monarchy, think King David, King Solomon, the country then split into 2. Israel became the kingdom of the north and Judah the kingdom of the south. The Assyrians attack and sack the northern kingdom of Israel, and everyone retreated to Judah. This is 1st Isaiah, and it goes up to chapter 39. The Assyrian dynasty eventually falls to Babylon. Babylon then sacks and burns Jerusalem, exiling all the Judeans and destroying the holy temple. This is 2nd Isaiah, and it opens in Isaiah 40 and goes through chapter 55. At some point, Babylon falls to Persia. Persian rulers allow Israel to return to their promised land and to rebuild their temple. Think Ezra, Nehemiah. This is 3rd Isaiah, and when it finishes out the prophet. And this is what we preached on last week. So you have to understand all of this history to really appreciate the importance of Isaiah 40, which is our text today. It's the first words uttered from God after the Babylonian exile. And it starts 2nd Isaiah. Think about this context. A more powerful adversary destroys your livelihood, destroys your business and homes, and burdens the center of your culture. It takes away your temple, all that history, all that culture, all those memories of being God's chosen people, and now it's gone, burned, and you're homeless and on the run. You'll be killed if you don't escape into exile. Decades of silence and destitute living are waiting on you. You are a shadow of yourself, a shadow of a people group, a shadow of your family's lineage, and every ounce of your soul is broken and in despair. You know nothing of peace. You are lost to the chaos. Then you hear these words. Comfort, O comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Cry to her that she has served her term, that her penalty is paid. She has been received from the Lord's hand, double for all her sins. A voice cries out, in the wilderness prepare the way of the Lord. Make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be lifted up, every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places a plain. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all people shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. To me, this is peace that surpasses understanding. It reverberates in the midst of chaos. It's a promise, a word, a spark, a jolt, a balm in the face of such calamity, a sound in the midst of silence. Knowing this history amplifies the power of this moment. A voice cries out, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. The 2nd Isaiah is a shout of peace in the midst of the chaos that's reminding us God is coming, and there will soon be peace on earth. I don't want to dilute the significance of this moment that was for Israel, but I need to make this connection to us today. I know there's chaos in your life. I know it. It's all around all of us. The stress of this year is showing on all of our faces. Everything is hard, and I get it. So let me offer to you what 2nd Isaiah offers to Israel as a word from the Lord in the midst of chaos. Comfort. Oh, comfort my people, says your God. This is good news, and we need to hear it from Isaiah again. It's for all of us today. In the midst of our chaos, whether it's created by us or created by the world around us, doesn't matter. In the midst of chaos, if we look closely enough, we'll find what we need this Christmas, and that's peace. The kind of peace that surpasses understanding. The kind of peace that only God can bring us. The kind of peace that assures our soul that God is with us, even in the chaos.